So I got this idea from a bunch of other videos I've been watching lately to I don't know, tell some fun stories, some fun, weird, creepy stories, what have you, but I don't have enough of those of my own to tell and ramble about. So I asked some lovely people following me on DeviantArt if they had any weird and or creepy and or unsettling stories and or funny stories that they wanted to share and wouldn't mind getting read for a video. So that's what I'm going to be reading today. I picked some from the very many I got. They're all very, very interesting. But I picked some of my faves and that kind of stuff, some that sounded fun to read, and I'm going to spend time reading them for you. So just know that none of these stories are my own, and because I'm so much fan art I've neglected to show in my videos because I haven't made a whole lot of videos lately. All of these stories are going to have fan art in the background, and every story is going to have a little title because that's fun and helps to distinguish them. So yeah, if this all works out, people like it, then I'll make more or something like that. Yeah, stay till the end for Patreon shout out because I'm doing that now. So yeah, welcome to about 40 minutes of me just talking. Let's go. Cracks knuckles. My weirdest experience was at a convention. ICACon. ICACon? ICACon. ICACon? At a convention with a very hyper friend of mine. Let's call her Bob. I had been in the Homestuck fandom for a year. Of all fandoms, it had to be Homestuck. But she had no idea what it was. This will be relevant later on. She also had little to no insight into what cosplay is, and had slapped together a Kiara closet cosplay literally the day before the convention. It consisted of a yellow dress with black stripes, felt ears, etc. I had worked pretty diligently on her face paint, but as soon as we got to the con, she wiped it all off because she decided she didn't like it, which annoyed me because she had whined and whined about not having face paint, and we even turned around to go back and grab it from my house. After speeding through the dealer's den, much to my dismay, I would have rather spent more time slowly making my way through it, we headed on over to the stage fighting panel that would be starting soon. However, when we got there, someone explained to her we wouldn't actually be fighting. How Bob didn't realize it was fake fighting is beyond me. And she decided we wouldn't be going to that panel. Or any panels for that matter. I was furious, but kept on internally screaming rather than lashing out. This was her first convention. I was trying to give her as much grace as humanly possible. But even my mom was getting annoyed. Now, quick backstory. When I had first asked Bob if she wanted to come with me to the con, she had said she couldn't because of an event going on that day. However, later she said that she could go for the entire thing. Never did she say she would have to leave early. And a backstory. Later, I ran off to the Homestuck photo shoot that was going on, and Bob stayed with my mom. I was gone for 2 hours, and it was complete bliss. When I got back to where Bob and my mom were, a lot of Homestuck cosplayers had congregated at the table close to us. Bob decided it was okay to go over and grab their horns. She had done that earlier when we went outside. I forgot to mention that, and it pissed a lot of people off. And messed with them. At that point, my mom was getting ready to take her home, but then Bob announced that we had to leave in about an hour because apparently the event she said she wasn't relevant was actually relevant. So she basically screwed up the entire convention for me, and I'm still salty with her. We're still friends, but I'm never going to bring her to another con again because she still has zero chill. Yesterday, actually, this guy sent me a private message on a different art site saying my art was very sexy. So I tried to be a little nice and said thank you, then asked me to send pictures of myself, and I responded, no, that's intrusive, and got a bunch of messages of, actually that was meant for someone else, or something. Okay, weird enough, but whatever, I can ignore that and move on, until the same dude pops up later in a public chat I'm in, spamming drawn dick pics. I've also had a few people use commissions as an excuse to try and ask me out or PM me asking personal info like that, and get weird or aggressive when I don't respond. I don't show pictures of myself, and I'm not very popular, so I'm not sure what it is that draws that sort of attention. Okay, let me tell ya. So, sometimes I get mild boosts of insomnia. Nothing too serious, mostly just a delay in my sleep schedule of an extra 3 or 4 hours. One night, somewhere last year, I don't know, I just could not sleep. Nothing would help me get sleepy or even get me to relax, so I eventually just gave up and sat in my living room at the desk drawing all night. The next day, when I went to school exhausted with literally 0 hours of sleep, I got a text from my neighbor, also friend. Dude, the police are all over the hood! Apparently, 6 houses, including my friend's house, were broken into that night with people home sleeping. People even reported things being stolen from the rooms they were sleeping in, and some people were very unfortunate and never woke up. That was and will hopefully be the last time I will ever be grateful of having those weird boosts of insomnia. I could have been one of the unfortunate ones. This has got to be my creepiest one. I've got one. For the sake of privacy, I'll give all the people mentioned fake names. I used to play this game called Wolf Quest for a long time. I used to RP on there with a bunch of random strangers. Because there were servers that you could join, the public version was kinda like a chat room game, but the version you play alone was story driven. So I joined one of these servers one day, and at first all was going smoothly. I introduced myself to the server creator, Donna. She seemed sweet, and for a while we talked until some other users showed up, one of which was named Caddy. Caddy was just a bit too creepy for my liking. They joined our conversation and not long after started giving me some mildly flirty compliments. Keep in mind, I had never met Caddy before this or have after, thankfully. They called me hot/pretty multiple times, said I was funny and that I had a great personality, etc. I was just a teeny bit uncomfortable at the time, but I didn't have the heart to tell him that, so I just accepted the compliments. It all seemed pretty harmless anyways. The whole time Donna would chime in saying, "I'm pretty too, right? See, I'm pretty funny too." I assumed that Donna was really, really young, almost younger than me at the time, to want that kind of attention on her. Caddy asked me how old I was, and I, apparently being smart enough not to tell him my real age, said I was 15. I was actually 11 at the time. Caddy said that they were 16. They asked me where I came from. My apparent smartness having run out at this point, I actually told them I was from America, and that I admired British accents, to which they replied with them supposedly being British, and that they love a good old American girl. At that point, I was thoroughly uncomfortable, but then Caddy started a humping pile. Me and Donna's avatars were lying down next to each other, where Caddy's avatar came over and started bowing over top of us. Donna was seemingly happy with it, as in she spammed XD into the chat, and didn't protest while I stayed there extremely uncomfortable but still not willing to say anything. Caddy would occasionally come up behind my wolf while we were talking and hump it individually as well. They would RP things like slaps Vinny's ass and cuddles Vinny. Thankfully, my game actually ended up crashing when they started doing this. At the time, I felt incredibly bad for them because I thought they were really harmless and that I'd broken their heart for leaving. This is a relatively short story, but once I was talking with some friends, sitting down, legs crossed, out of habit. I wasn't really paying much mind to it, but this kid I didn't know walked up and sat right next to me. May I emphasize, I had no clue whatsoever who this kid even was. He sits next to me, then grabs my leg and puts it in his lap. I moved it off, and he pulled it back and took off my sock and shoe. Then this kid, who I didn't even know, tickles my foot and asks me if I was ticklish. I was so confused. I said, "No?" Then he walked away. This whole time, I had no idea what was happening, and I was just sitting there, processing what the hell just happened. That was the day my foot was raped. My friend's words, not mine. So a while back, I met this guy via an online game. Back then, my anxiety was pretty bad, and I had no confidence using the voice chat, so I just used the text chat while he used the voice chat. Everything was great for quite a few months. He was a great friend. I'd met some other awesome people through him, and we all played games together. It was fun. But then I gained the confidence for voice chat, and that is when things got weird. Now, I had noticed before, whenever a girl used the voice chat, he became very weird with how he acted, and I thought perhaps this is just how he talked to some people he knew. My mistake. I used the voice chat and he discovered I was a girl. That's when things just became horrible. He began to flirt with me and constantly pester to date me. Now, this might not seem so bad, but at the time he knew I was underage and not interested. He, however, was in his late 20s. Things became uncomfortable quickly, and in private messages while we were playing games with other people in the group, he was calling me things like cutie, sexy, and so on. He has never seen a single photo of me and kept insisting we were a perfect match. After a week, he then began to call me things like whore, slut, and such terrible things on the public voice chat every time I rejected him in private. And even had the nerve on his Discord server to give me the role, my cutie. He also gave suicide threats a few times, saying no one would ever love him. Again, I was underage and an anxiety-filled teen who didn't know what to do. Eventually, after months of dealing with this, I did block him on Steam, Discord, and left his server. Haven't talked to him since, but he was hella creepy and weird from how it went to friend times to creepy times just from using voice chat once. I'll give you one that happened to me and one that happened to a coworker. I worked at Kmart back in 2008. I was 20 and was put in the electronics department, which meant I was on my own for the entire shift every day. As I'm sure you can imagine, I got hit on by a lot of male customers much older than me, but one particular incident will always stick out. I was dusting and cleaning off the display TVs when a guy approached me with his toddler-aged son in tow. He looked to be about late 30s to early 40s. He asked me a question about a product and where it was. I don't remember exactly what he was looking for, but I told him where they were located, and turned to go back to my cleaning. Then he asks me if I would like to go to dinner with him. I told him no thank you, I have a boyfriend. He immediately copped an attitude and went, "Yeah, sure," and left. One of my now former coworkers is 16, and last weekend some guy old enough to be her dad started flirting with her for while she was checking out at the registers. He asked her for her number and if he could take her to lunch sometime. She told him she had a boyfriend and was underage. He had the nerve to reply, "Oh, well, you don't look underaged," as if that makes it better. And for the record, yes, she does. She actually looks about 12. My mother literally just had something extremely rude and inappropriate happen to her. While I was at home watching my baby sister, my mother and stepfather went to church like any other Sunday. Mind you, the church is extremely small, so everybody knows everybody. There are literally 10 people, including the pastors. There are no children in this church. However, on this particular Sunday, our pastors decided to bring up a guest speaker who was also a close friend of theirs, who claimed to be a prophet and could directly receive messages from God. The minute she got up on the podium, she stated, "Every single church I've been to and spoken for, they have never once asked me to come back." There's a huge reason behind this. Her message was plain and simple. God will not bless your mess if you are disobedient to him. However, the entire time she was relaying her message, she was staring at my mother. The entire time. Once she was done, she came to my mother and stepfather, looked dead into their eyes, and asked them, "Do you want to have another child?" Both my mother and stepfather were incredibly confused by her words. They did, in fact, not want another child. My mother cannot physically have another child. So when my parents said no, the prophet kept going. "No, God has given me a vision. You are going to have a baby boy." At this point, my parents were the literal embodiment of, "What?" They have been together for 10 years now, going on 11 in a week. Their relationship is full of love and understanding. And yet, this preacher was insisting that they were unhappy, that my stepfather has always wanted a son, and that this is why he is unhappy. You want to know the reasoning behind this? Your heart was broken by another woman, and that heartbreak prevented you from wanting a son. First of all, my stepfather has never been in a serious relationship before my mom. Second of all, he has always wanted 2 girls, and he has 2 girls. The prophet kept going, however, making them stand up. She then put anointing oil on my mother's stomach and started rubbing it because she wanted to pray over her womb. During this prayer, she said, "You need to be obedient to your husband. The only reason why you don't have a son is because you don't want one, and your husband is playing along even though he truly wants it." During this happening, my mother did try to bring up the fact that they were going to be celebrating their anniversary soon. Thus, the prophet looked at my mother dead in the eyes and said, "These last 10 years were for you. These next 10 years will be for him." Implying that my mother was being selfish for the last 10 years of their marriage, and now it was my stepfather's turn to be selfish. This is not how relationships work, and my parents' relationship definitely don't work like this. After sitting back down, she came back up to my mother, took down her hair, something that she extremely hates, and said, "Your husband likes your hair down. Keep it long for him." Because apparently she knows my stepfather that well after only meeting him twice. Then she forbade my mother from ever cutting her hair again. She then leaned down, got into my mother's face, and whispered, "When you ask your husband what he likes sexually, then you need to obey him," and then proceeded to open up my mother's jacket to reveal her cleavage, which my mother promptly closed back up. My mother was not only astounded, but she was extremely humiliated, to the point where she no longer wants to go back to the church. I feel so bad for my mother and for anyone else who has ever had a similar experience. I had recently moved into a new town and school where everything was very large and spacious. School had been going well, and I had made some friends, one including the kid this story is about. The way home on the bus, one of my friends had given me his phone number. Let's say his name is David. So David and I were just texting each other memes. Then I had to leave because it was my bus stop and I had to go home. After I got home, I was working on art and I got a text from David saying, "I am coming." I responded, "Coming where?" He replied, "You're home." Scared, I texted, "Please don't." 5 minutes passed, and then he replied, "Too bad." At this point, I thought he was just messing with me, so I resumed my art. About 50 minutes go by, and I hear a knock at the door. With my parents not being home, I had to answer the door. I opened the door, and David's brother was standing there. "David wants to play," he said in a creepy horror movie voice. Then I look up and see David standing in my front yard. I tell him, "Sorry, I'm busy," and then slammed the door in his face. After I closed the door, I ran upstairs and looked out the window to see David closer to the door. So I did what any logical person would do, open the window and threaten to call the police. Then he ran home, which was 2 miles away. The next day of school, I learned he had moved away to another state, and that gave me relief. Life has been good since, and no more creepy stalker things have happened except for 4 months ago when I got a text from David saying, "I still want to play." Along with the text, there was a picture of me drawing in a park. But the day I was drawing in the park was 3.5 months after he moved away. Okay, about a month ago, this woman comes on here who's a fan of Underfell Sands, my profile's namesake, and decides to try and roleplay, being all buddy-buddy and wants her self-insert fan character thing to befriend Fell. No big. I just kind of RP'd him, the character, like I normally would, but she started getting worse after a while. She asked if I was taken. Yes, I am, and I made sure to be clear that in no way, shape, or form was I single. This individual blatantly ignored that and kept going on about being friends and accused me of flirting, to which I wasn't at all, and wound up making 2 new accounts. 2! To stalk me and keep on her creepy mission to get a fictional character that I roleplayed to befriend her and possibly have a relationship with her self-insert. I blocked all 3 accounts, and she's not messaged me again, thank God. I eventually just went off on her and told her that if she keeps this up, I'd find a way to contact the staff about harassment and stalking. Creepy stories. Well, I have one that's pretty bad. Around November last year, I think, not exactly sure when, I needed to make a last-minute trip to Save-A-Lot for my mom for some things for dinner. Wasn't a big deal, I've done it a few times before, just had to be quick since I take the bus. We don't own a car. Well, luckily, nothing bad happened on the bus while I was shopping. It was while I was waiting for the bus home that for some reason fate decided I needed an effed up homeless story. When I got to the bus stop, which is near a pretty busy intersection in front of a 7-Eleven, there was this older black guy sitting there. He looked to be about 40 or so and had kinda ratty clothing. I thought nothing of it and sat down on the opposite side of the bench to wait for the bus so I could head home. The guy starts chatting with me, making small talk at first. Again, nothing unusual there. I've had plenty of nice conversations with people while waiting for the bus. Eventually, the guy asks me my name and tells me his, which I'll leave out for privacy. Let's just call him CP or Creepy Perv. I ended up telling him my name was Jade, which is only partially true because at this time I realized I could smell alcohol on him. After telling him my name, he ends up cracking open another beer. I assume another anyway. He did smell like he's been drinking since before I met him. After a few sips, he ends up talking to me again. This time, questions started getting personal. How old are you? Do you have a boyfriend? Where do you live? Etc. I told him I was 16, that I had a girlfriend, and I live up the road. Partial lie. After that, he laughed and started inviting me to his place, rambled about something completely off topic and unnecessary, and told me that one night with him would turn me straight. Multiple times. Then he tried to get touchy with me. Like, first he tried to grab my shoulder. I moved so he couldn't, and kept trying to get me to go home with him on some pretty ratty-ass bike. I ended up quickly saying something like, "Oh, I forgot insert generic thing here," and rushed inside the 7-Eleven, where I promptly told the guy at the counter what happened, and he gladly let me hide out in the store till the bus came. I spent that bus ride praying I never saw that guy again, and being very paranoid he'd find me somehow. And the 2-block walk from the bus stop, I actually had some guy named Robin, bit of a creep himself, but means little harm, carry 3 bags I had for me. It was a nice surprise, even if I didn't leave the house for over 3 days afterwards. So this is a bit more rude than creepy or weird, plus a multi-part experience. In 5th grade, I was in school where everyone was spoiled rich, as in million-dollar homes rich. I happened to be one of the few students living off the island in one of the more middle-class areas, so that's kind of some context. One day during recess, 2 girls came up to me and told me that my clothes were very bad. But no, it doesn't stop there. They tell me that to my face that they were going to start a donation box so I could afford new clothes. Pair this up with them talking bad about me behind my back, and it was the moment I knew these people looked down on me. Later on, it's May, and it just so happens that I'm breaking down during recess because it being the anniversary of my sibling's death. This girl, let's call her Sally, comes up to me. Despite what I was telling her about it not being a good time to talk to me, Sally proceeds to say some unsavory things I would never repeat. Yeah, totally makes the day better. Let's end this with a bang. A rather annoying classmate of mine, let's call him Trist, has been awful to me for a while. However, this kind of takes the cake. It's the end of the period and we're leaving ELA. As I'm in the aisle of desks, Trist and his friends knock me onto the floor and saw what they did, never apologized or acknowledged that they knocked me against a bunch of desks. In my homeroom, we had a Friday tradition of a trash can where we could put in sticky notes with problems we were having in school. Our teacher would then read them aloud, censoring the names. I put a sticky note for what happened and I mistakenly believed that she would do something about it, plus the many other times that this has happened. Next week, my teacher comes up to me, sticky note in hand, saying, "Is this true?" in a very unhappy manner. It turns out, Trist had written down the incident and put it in the trash can. However, he wrote that he was the one pushed into the ground and added that I had pinned him to the wall and berated him. In the end, I told the teacher what really happened and she never did anything about Trist lying and pushing me down into desks, and did nothing about the bullying I'd reported throughout the year. Great school, 10 out of 10. I was in the city for my college classes and about to head out to go home. I was at a stoplight waiting for it to turn green, and it was summertime and super hot, so my windows were down on my car. I wasn't paying attention to anything but the light, and some guy crossing the street, most likely a homeless guy, by what I could tell, stopped in my driver window. He didn't ask for money or anything, he just started professing his love. He told me, "You're the prettiest girl I've ever seen. I'm in love with you on first sight. If you marry me, I'll give you anything you want and spoil you like a princess for all your life. I'll give you all the money you could ever want if you become mine forever." Of course I told him no and that I had a boyfriend, but thank you anyways. Just as the light turned green and someone honked at me. It was odd and creepy. Ooh. Okay, so where I live, there's a really horrible but kind of fun water park called H2Osis. Original, right? So I went there when I was around 8 for my cousin's birthday. There weren't too many adults around the pool except for maybe one or two lifeguards and some parents on their phones. The place was already freaked me out because there were cockroaches everywhere, and the whole place was basically falling apart. So, how the place was laid out was that there was an upstairs where the food and party were, and the ground floor with all the pools. Where this creepy story takes place is on the ground floor in the Lazy River. The Lazy River was basically this slow-moving river that went around the whole swimming area, and you could swim down or float down. The water park had a lot of creepy props, so it was perfect for hiding in the river and being out of sight with the lifeguards. I was really tall and looked much older than I actually was, so it was pretty easy to mistake me for 11 or 12. I was swimming around the Lazy River when I saw someone that looked out of place or off. This man was about in maybe his late teens or early 20s. He just walked extremely slow and locked eyes with me. I thought he just wanted to talk with me, so I played it cool and swam up to his corner where a door was open and jokingly said, "Ah, finally, some fresh air." When I swam up to the corner, he was a good 10 feet away from me, but when I stopped, he ducked underwater, swam incredibly fast towards me, and splashed up right next to me. He didn't say anything the whole time. He just kept staring at me with large, piercing eyes, keeping in mind I am 8, and he was a whole foot taller than me. He must have noticed me slowly backing away because he snatched my wrist and yanked me into him. I couldn't do anything but stand in horror. Then, this still scares me to this day. With his free hand, he poked my cheek and chuckled. There were other people in the river, but the ones behind us must have thought we were family or something. Thankfully, one of my cousin's moms were in the river with us and saw the whole thing. One of them yelled at the man to go away, and one of them yelled for me to run to them. For the rest of the birthday party, I stayed far away from the Lazy River. I don't know if that man was caught or had a mental illness, but when we were leaving, I saw someone much older yelling at him. Okay, so there is this girl online who I was friends with. She had already gone through some stuff with some other people here and had a pretty big blacklist. One day, my best friend / Moirail decided to talk to one of the people that this girl had problems with to hear the story from both sides. This girl immediately took that as my Moirail being on that person's side, which she wasn't. She was staying as neutral as possible. So that girl came to me and was like, "I can't be friends with your Moirail. They are believing the lies of that person. I hope we can still be friends." I was just like, "Lol, sure, you don't need to like the people that I like just to be my friend." After a while, they had stopped bitching about the other, and I was just like, if you ever fight again, I will end all the friendships. My Moirail and her were okay with that and had stopped fighting and decided not to talk to each other. Then another friend asked what was going on because they went on hiatus. I, forgetting that they had written it under my journal and not PM'd me about it, answered them and dropped names. I didn't notice that at the time. The next day, the one girl noted me, saying how offended she was by me dropping names and how rude it was of me. I quickly hid the comment and answered her saying, "Oh damn, sorry, I forgot that she didn't PM me and that it wasn't private. I hid all the comments though. Now no one can read them. I hope you can accept my apology." I was genuinely sorry. Next thing I knew, she unwatched me and blocked me. I was shook. After some indirect nonsense of her getting her friends / partially my friends to block my Moirail and me, she decided to post an apology in a journal that we couldn't read under normal circumstances because she blocked us. Note, I could read it because I was checking her in incognito mode because I didn't want her spamming any fake facts about us. And yes, you might say, she apologized, so everything's alright, right? Wrong. Whatever apologies was that how childish we were and other people, and that she was so sorry that we're so immature and get some sick joy out of bullying her. After that, she was just passive-aggressive and directing at us and acting like a little kid. Okay, here goes. I kept an old picture of my dad in my wallet as a way of keeping me from spending too much. The picture is of his senior picture in 1980, and he was quite attractive. I have zero idea since 1, it's my dad, and 2, I don't swing that way. I started keeping that picture in my wallet since freshman year of high school. When I was a junior, I was rearranging some things in my bag before class and I had to take my wallet out. A girl who sat in front of me, let's call her Nosy, plucked the wallet out when she saw the picture of my dad. She cooed as she sat in her seat, taking the picture out to better see it. I asked for it back and she laughed. This is how the conversation went after that. "Who is this hottie? Your boyfriend?" "No, that's my dad. Can I have my wallet back?" Damn, he's cute. Is he single? No, he's married to my mom. Please give me my wallet back. How old was he when you were born? That's a photo from when he was like in high school in 1980. And no way, don't you lie to me. Turn the photo over. She did, to find the handwritten 1980 date on it. She paled and gave me my wallet back, picture included. I know I probably shouldn't have rubbed it in, but I showed her a recent picture of him. To put it in perspective of the massive change between the two, the picture had a young man with a stylish beard, medium-length hair, and a nice tweed jacket over a button-up and a tie. My father nowadays looks like a Viking Santa Claus who is always wearing a kilt. Bald head, epic beard, a bit heavy-set, and wearing a kilt, no matter what the weather is. I have one about a lady in Walmart. Here's a little background information. So, I'm a girl with short hair and a muscular build, so naturally I look more like a tiny man than a female. Not to mention my voice is abnormally deep. It's literally lower than a lot of guys I go to school with. Anyway, this takes place during the winter. I'm a Minnesotian, so I don't get cold easily. I was at Walmart, and I was wearing a plaid white and black men's sweatshirt, sleeves rolled up, a Captain America beanie hat, and winter camouflage basketball shorts. I needed to go to the bathroom, so I left my friend and walked into it. There was a woman washing her hands, and she looked at me and gasped. She asked me, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I rose a brow and said, "I need to use the restroom." She pointed in the direction of the men's room and said, "The men's room is over there." I nodded and said, "I know that." She scoffed and replied, "Well, stop pretending to be a girl and go use it." I furrowed both of my kick-ass eyebrows and said, "I am a girl." The woman put her hand on her hip. She looked at me, scoffed again, and said, "Prove it." I was so taken back that I just unzipped my sweatshirt and puffed out my small female chest bumps. She gasped and put a hand over her mouth. "I'm so sorry. Your face is just so masculine." Then she left. I looked in the mirror and frowned, but then I went to the bathroom and felt better. I have so many more stories about being mistaken for a boy. It's great. I actually have a pretty wild story that has more or less scared me for life and now makes me super heckin' cautious when dealing with folks who say they have depression and are suicidal and stuff. Mostly because it was this instance that made me realize how many people out there will lie about such serious problems. And trigger warning for anyone who needs it, we're going into bizarre faking suicide and potentially faking depression territory here, so you have been warned. So this whole fiasco started a couple years ago when I was super naive and believed everything folks said. There was this one person who I'd met on Scratch who was acting really upset and stuff. Me being me, I tried to help her as best I could. We'll call this girl Bloodrin because I have no better name ideas. But Bloodrin ended up faking suicide, basically quitting the account she was on and coming back on a different account. Everything about her was the same, and I never noticed because I believed everything folks said back then. It wasn't until about a year later that I learned she had faked the suicide, and was the same girl I had met when I first started Scratch. She told me herself. Now, backing up a moment here, I was actually really effing upset when I heard Bloodrin was gone. Heck, I partially blamed myself. So when she said she was the same person and gave me all the proof I had not noticed before, I was pretty upset. And I should have seen the big-ass red flag, but I didn't. I continued being friends with this girl, and eventually when I got my DA, we started talking here. It was here that I saw how unstable she was, and started making space between us. She'd constantly depend on me, my sis, and others to keep her happy, and other stuff like that, and that's basically the definition of a toxic friendship. Eventually, I made enough space to where we only talked every once in a while. I wasn't watching her on her current account, and I know she wasn't doing the same for me. And all during those times we talked, it was nice and stuff. Like, she's still a person. I see no reason to be mean to her, no matter how upset I am. About a month ago or so, she messaged me about asking why I wasn't on the friends list I hadn't updated in forever. Crazy thing was, she was on that list, just not with her current account. So I'm pretty sure she didn't see her old account or something. Anyway. So I explained to her that I really didn't see us as friends anymore, and she blew up. She called me salty for making space, shit-talked me to my sister behind my back like it got bad. She even told my sister that they couldn't be friends anymore because, quote, "You're being too much like Winter." Like, what? Bitch, no! My sis and I are very different, thank you. At least different enough. I kinda gave up trying to reconcile with Blooderin and just blocked her. My sis did the same not long after that, but she'd given up as well. It was a huge relief for both of us, honestly. Problem is, we can only block her on DA since Scratch doesn't have a blocking system. So she crawled back to my sis on Scratch and asked why she'd been blocked. I jumped in because I'm a good big sister or something, and Blooderin and I ended up coming to the conclusion that we shouldn't talk anymore. And we haven't since. But it was still pretty rough for us. Honestly, I hope she'd changed and didn't depend on folks to solve her problems. I know myself and friends were getting pretty fed up with it, and it was starting to stress us all out. But yeah, it was the whole situation that happened over the course of 2 bloody years that opened my eyes to how shitty folks can be. I have more uncanny/unnerving stories about scenarios than just weird or creepy about people, like how my cousin, brother, and I found an arm in a creek once, but I do have a couple off the top of my head. My sister is currently living with her boyfriend pretty far from where I live, and that's where this story takes place. We have several stores we always go to when I visit. Dee Dee's, a discount clothing store like Ross or Marshall's, but even cheaper, Hobby Lobby, and Goodwill. This story takes place in the Goodwill. My sister and I went there and immediately made a beeline to the book section because I had a collection of obscure books, real-life vampire anthology, 2 books of creatures from various religions, myths, and folklore, and a book on how to survive movie disasters such as Sharknado. And I'm always game to get more. My sister went off on her own while I was looking at the books, and a guy walked over and I could see him glancing between me and the bookshelves. I was holding a book, so I thought maybe he was just trying to see the book I was looking at. I realized it wasn't the book I wanted, it was a novel, so I set it back on the shelf. When I did that, the guy turned to me and asked, "Can you read?" What? Yeah. So you actually, read books? Yeah? And he smiled. Oh, that's great! No one I know seems to know how to read anymore. Or at least likes to. I'm trying to get into reading. What kind of books do you like? I told him I like novels, mostly modern fantasy, sometimes with a little romance, but I didn't seek out romance novels. I also told him a little about my obscure book collection. He seemed to be staring at me as I spoke, and not like in the way you'd be watching someone intently as you listen to them speak. He was staring. He then asked me if I ever used Kindles or other e-readers. I said I had one, but I still liked physical books too. He grinned again, looked at the bookshelves, and grabbed a random book and handed it to me. So is this the kind of book you like? I looked at the cover and it was an erotic novel. The cover was monochromatic red and depicted a man from the neck down sitting on the edge of a bed, facing the camera, holding a belt, with a woman kneeling down between his knees. The guy saw the cover and laughed. I awkwardly said no and put it back. I told him a second time that I wasn't interested in romance/erotica novels. By this time, my anxiety was through the roof. He then took a moment to introduce himself. He had a generic guy name like James or something. My name is Kira, and when I introduced myself, I said such, and he responded, "Rika?" Sure, my name is now Rika. Just then, I received a call from my sister. I was thankful and took my leave. My sister was sitting on a nearby couch, but hadn't seen the exchange. She simply wanted me to feel how soft the couch was. When I walked over to her, I told her what happened, and she had me sit down next to her, and she swore she'd keep me safe. A few minutes passed, and my sister tried to calm me down, as I was on the edge of a panic attack. The guy walked over. I'm not sure if he was on accident or if he had planned it. He called me Kendra this time and asked if that was my sister. I said yes, still trying to be nice. He stopped and blinked a few times before asking if we were identical twins. For the record, my sister is 2 years older and is 5 inches taller than me. I also have 75 pounds on my sister. I'm fat, being apple-shaped, and she's curvy, being hourglass. I have brown eyes and brown hair, while my sister has green eyes and black hair. People rarely believe we're sisters. She takes after my mom's side of the family, I take after our dad's. Let alone has anyone ever asked if we were twins. My sister, not being one for small talk or humoring people, said we weren't, and that she was older. He tried making small talk, but my sister shut him down every time. Her answers were about 1 to 4 words long, and when she could get away with it, she answered questions directed at me too. She played along for a few minutes before receiving a text that she lied about, saying it was her boyfriend waiting for us outside and that we really needed to check out and meet him. She grabbed my arm and walked me over to the check stand, and thankfully there was no line. And she bought her shirt and we left. We kept checking over our shoulder to make sure he wasn't following us. When we got into her car, as we had driven over ourselves, she texted her boyfriend, who had texted us telling us that he was heading home from his job. Telling him we had something to tell him when we got home, we asked him to get ready to greet us when we got there. Hearing our story, my sister's boyfriend was super apologetic to me as if it was his fault. It's not. And he made sure we went to a dinner I liked, to make me feel better. This is a patron shout out I'm now doing at the end of all my videos to celebrate the fact that my patrons are really cool people and I don't really know why they give me money, but they do. So first of all, to the $2 patrons on screen, I want to tell you I love you too. But you know who I want to give a high five? Slowpoke Queen, my $5 patron. High five to you, my friend. But you want to know whose power level is over $9? FEMA, Twisted Disaster, and Skyak 2. Thank you all for giving me money for some reason. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for making it to the end of the video. Good job. Now to the outro.